The widely predicted red wave did not come to pass, and as a result, it's looking like the Republicans are going to win a much more narrow victory in the House than originally expected. The latest count from Decision Desk HQ shows Republicans with a 210 to 193 lead over the Democrats, with 32 races still too close to call. Most projections now estimate that when the dust settles, Republicans will wind up with a majority of somewhere between 5 and 15 seats. And should that materialize and the GOP ends up with that narrow majority, that means that a small group of moderate Republicans will hold an awful lot of power, because without them, nothing's getting passed. Think about how important Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema have been over the past few years, with the Democrats clinging to control in a 50-50 Senate. Any piece of legislation the Democrats have looked to pass has required the approval of Manchin and Sinema. And they've used their leverage to win multiple concessions on various bills over the past 2 years, bringing a lot of key legislation back towards the center. With a slim GOP majority in the House, the moderate Republicans in that chamber could now have that same leverage, and they could well prove to be as powerful as Manchin and Sinema. Now, granted, that already small group of moderates has taken a hit in this cycle. 10 House Republicans voted to impeach former President Donald Trump in 2021, even though that's not the standard of what makes someone a moderate Republican. And so far, only one Washington State Congressman Dan Newhouse has secured re-election. A second, David Valadao, is currently leading his race. The other 8 either lost primary races to far-right opponents or retired before suffering the same fate. But Newhouse and Valadao are not the only moderate Republicans who will likely be seated when the new Congress convenes in January. Many of those moderates can be found in the House Problem Solvers Caucus, a bipartisan group of 56 House members, equally split between Democrats and Republicans, whose mission is to break through the partisan gridlock to try to find common sense solutions to various issues. Now, the Problem Solvers Caucus did take some hits in this election, but still, 18 Republican members of the caucus will return to Congress in January, a number that by itself will almost certainly give them veto power over any move Republicans would try that requires a majority. And so they become crucial, because there has been talk, a radical agenda from Republican majority Congress, including the impeachment of various White House officials, President Biden being impeached. Now, that will not happen without the moderates agreeing. And the ranks of the problem solver Republicans may soon be bolstered even further. Adam Frisch, the moderate Democrat running against Lauren Boebert in Colorado, who we talked about on the show last night, has pledged to join the problem solvers if he prevails in his race. Still very close. And there are other incoming freshmen who are elected on a platform of moderation as well. Mike Lawler, who defeated incumbent Sean Patrick Maloney in New York's 17th District, has denounced, quote, partisan food fights. He's pledged not to support congressional oversight investigations without just cause. Over the past 2 years, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema have become reviled on the far left. To progressive extremists, Manchin and Sinema are obstructionists, roadblocks, holding up a far-left agenda. But for the marginalized moderate majority, Manchin, Sinema, others like them, have often come to stand for pragmatic, common-sense governance. The handful of Republican moderates in the House now have that same opportunity. Will they seize it? Joining us now is Mike Lawler, the Republican Congressman-Elect in New York's 17th District. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. All right, so many of your more soon-to-be extreme colleagues start some of the partisan food fights and certainly want to make investigations of Democrats front and center. Will you fight against that?
Well, listen, as I said yesterday in my victory speech, obviously the House has oversight responsibility. Where there are investigations that are warranted and justified, that is our responsibility. Where it is purely political, I'm really not interested in doing that, because I think we saw under the Trump administration, Democrats went way too far with their investigations in many cases, and it was very political. And I think that is not good for our country, and certainly not to go from one extreme to the other every 2 years. I think we all have an obligation as elected officials to take these responsibilities seriously. And when warranted, yes. When not,
well, let me
no.
ask you about that. Anything that you see now, I mean, because you already have many members of the, the sort of far right already announcing that they want to investigate various cabinet members. They want to do a Hunter Biden investigation. They want to consider impeachment articles against Joe Biden. Any of those, do you think, based on what you know today, worthy of an investigation in Congress?
Look, I think, again, I'm not going to get into a specific which one should or shouldn't. I think the objective has to be where there is evidence, fine, warranted, move forward with House oversight investigations, which are an obligation of the House. But when just to say, oh, we're going to impeach or we're going to investigate, to me, does not pass the
Let me ask you. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.